Hey, welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. Glad to have you with me. Hope you're having a great holiday season. Whichever ones you celebrate, I'd like to celebrate them all. Grew up in a neighborhood where that was happening and still have a soft spot in my heart for every single one of those holidays. I'm jealous of you folks who got 8 presents, one every night for a while. But we're not here to talk about that. My gift to you today is 2 great guests talking about how we can recruit more hunters, the right ways to do it, some advice on how you can do it on an individual basis, and then a few other things as well. Great show in store for you. Talk some hunting reports from your last weekend, mine as well. We'll talk about dog training, the reader poll, and what you're going to buy next. Our Handle It segment is on timing your commands. And then I got a public access tip for you as well. It's all coming up on the Upland Nation podcast, coming to you from the Cabela's podcast studio. Well, for the first time in a long time, I didn't hunt this weekend. Probably a good idea. It's been one of those seasons. I remember interviewing Pat McManus, the great humor writer, many years ago. When we were both working with Outdoor Life magazine. And I asked him on a related subject, Pat, what's your best advice for somebody who wants to catch more fish? And he said, do not go where I'm fishing. And that's been my hunting season the last few weeks. Anytime I go somewhere, it's been kind of slow. Still wonderful. Beautiful places, great friends, good dog work. Sure could use a few more birds in the bag, but that's lower on the priority. And at least the guys I've sent to some of my spots over the years are reporting back with great success. So I'll take a little bit of credit for that, just a tiny bit. And hope to be back to some of those spots before the end of the season. How's your season going? Well, some of you answered that question just recently on the Facebook page. Let's go and see what you're doing out there. And David Gilbertson. Yeah, David, I think I recognize that mountain in the background there. Glad you're out there again and hope it's going well for you and your wonderful little dog. Tom Moen worked hard on recall with the e-collar volume up. I hope you mean the sound volume, because those little dogs probably don't need a whole bunch of electronic encouragement. Michael Gill said he didn't get any ducks this weekend. They didn't get a cold front, but he did build a beautiful rack for his waders. Boy, I wish I was allowed to use power tools. That's really a nice-looking rack there. Colin Smith found a couple long tails in the snow with his dogs. Good shot. Dennis Bohannon didn't answer. Just put up a photo with 3 chuckers and a beautiful short hair. Sure love those flashy white dogs. Good job to both of you. George Cummins, I'm glad to hear from you, my good friend. George helped decorate the house with a buck rub Christmas tree. And I could see the rub and I could see the buck. Oh, that's probably the most innovative Christmas tree I've seen in a while. But most folks probably don't get it. Frank Caldwell says the fuzzy dog gets better every time we go. That is a long line of roosters on the table. Looks like enough guys around there to have a limit for everybody. Keep up the good work, everyone. And if you want to share your success, however you define that, from buck rub Christmas trees to a pile of birds, go to the Wing Shooting USA Facebook page or to the Upland Nation Facebook page and share your photos, whether they're scenic or otherwise, and share your stories every Monday morning. The Upland Nation podcast is brought to you in part by Sage and Breaker Gun Care products crafted at the highest caliber. If you're still looking for a present for yourself, for your spouse, for a hunting buddy, check them out, sageandbreaker.com. Free shipping always, lots of new products, lots of last-minute gift ideas. It's all there at sageandbreaker.com. All right, so a subject near and dear to my heart. The old teacher in me still thinks that the best thing we can do these days is bring more participants into our sport, our passion, our pastime, for all sorts of reasons, whether it's simply so they buy lots of stuff and pay their Pittman-Robertson tax, or because we need hunting partners and better conservationists and more of them. So joining me on the line from Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, Marissa Jensen, who's the Education and Outreach Program Manager, and Colby Kerber, who's the Hunting Heritage Program Manager. Welcome to you both. Marissa, why don't you tell me what the heck do you do as the Education and Outreach Program Manager?
Thanks so much for having us on, and I'm sure my colleagues would ask me the same question every day. I just love my job. I get to work in a variety of areas. One of the things that I do is oversee our National Women on the Wing initiative, which is, developed to inspire and provide opportunities for women to become engaged in dynamic conservation and just really get them more involved in the organization. I also work with 20 to 25 high school students across the country in our National Youth Leadership Council. Those individuals are interested in conservation and advocating for wildlife locally and on a national level. So it really, gives me a lot of opportunities to work with other people who are just really passionate about the same things that we are.
And Colby, as Hunting Heritage Program Manager, that's a pretty broad term. What do you spend your time doing most of the time?
Yeah, as Marissa said, Scott, thanks for having us here. But what I spend most of my time doing is working on the engagement side, specifically with hunter recruitment, things like shooting sports and learn to hunt events, and playing a role between our state agencies and federal agencies and our local volunteers and chapters. Because as you mentioned at the beginning, it's a process for all of us to be recruiting, retaining, and reactivating individuals into this outdoor lifestyle that we all appreciate and love so much. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time, is just trying to engage individuals and provide different pathways for them to become hunter conservationists.
All right, so we got the formalities out of the way now. Let's get down to brass tacks. Marissa, if you had one chance to go hunting, where would you go and what would you hunt for?
Alaska, and I would hunt for ptarmigan.
And is that because you haven't done it, or because you've done it and you love it so much?
I have not done it, and it's not even, from what I've heard, ptarmigan hunting is not quite what you think it would be. But I think just the terrain and the atmosphere and just the wildness of Alaska is just really appealing to me. And ptarmigan just seem, like extremely fascinating species. So I'd love to see one up close someday.
And that's not even counting the grizzly bears. How about you, Colby? Where would you be if I said, boom, you're hunting?
Well, as Marissa said, I really like the big landscapes that can really humble you and make you feel so small, in a sense, in this bigger part of the natural ecosystem. But I'm going to change it up a little bit. Instead of doing the upland bird hunting, and I'm actually going to have my bow and arrow with me, and I'm going to be in the mountains having a big bull elk screaming at me. So I'm going to be archery hunting, one-on-one, public land, me versus a bull elk.
I cannot figure out why the hell Howard Vincent would hire a guy who's an elk hunter.
and the thing is I wouldn't call myself an elk hunter, Scott. I've been on elk hunts, but I've never harvested one yet. So I don't know if I can be claimed an elk hunter at this point.
Well, if that was the qualifications, I'm just barely a bird hunter, period, then. You both obviously working hard in our world, trying to make it better in whatever ways are possible, and we do appreciate that. I've followed Pheasants Forever and worked with the organization, well, I think since day one, in one way or another. But in the grand scheme of things, you're each taking a piece of this big puzzle and trying to fit it into the rest of the pieces. What is the biggest challenge each of you faces when it gets down to kind of executing your charge? Marissa?
That's a tough question. I think it's just trying to reach individuals and share the passion and the incredible opportunities that wildlife and wild places offer us, with technology and screen time and things like that, it gets harder and harder to convince people to spend more time outside. And I think this year has been kind of eye-opening for some people, as some of what they normally do just hasn't been as available to them. And so they look to the outdoors as a place for reprieve. And I hope that continues. And I hope that we continue to see a growth in interest in the outdoors and hunting and conservation, just because it means so much to not only future generations, but the wild places and wildlife that live there too.
Last I looked, one of our best sources of new hunters was women, which is one reason I'm sure that you're doing what you do. But in most of us who are listening to this broadcast are married to women, and some of them would like to bring their spouse or significant other along and turn them into hunters. We had that discussion just last night at our house. What are some of the most important things we can do or should never do? And I'll never forget, when I was making a fly fishing show, I would ask every pro guide I worked with, what's the biggest mistake we make? And they said, teaching your spouse to fly fish. Do you have any advice for the husbands in the crowd who want to recruit their wives?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing to realize for all of us, regardless of gender, age, backgrounds, is that everybody is an individual. We all have different needs, and that translates into the field as well. And so, if there's a spouse or a significant other or a friend, whoever that may be, that a gentleman wants to take into the field with them, the most important thing that they can do is talk to them one-on-one and find out what they want from that experience, and then just be there, supportive along the way. It may not be the husband or the spouse or the significant other teaching them. They may want to learn from somebody else, or they may want to learn from their significant other, but they have certain needs in the field that need to be fulfilled, or maybe it's not about the harvest. Maybe it's just going along for a walk to see what it looks like and what it feels like. I tell people all the time that, if somebody is on the fence about learning to upland hunt or learn to hunt in general, just invite them to go on a walk with you. They can carry a gun if they want, to get used to how that feels, but they don't need to shoot. They don't need to harvest an animal if that's not the first thing that's on their list. If they just want to go for a walk and see what that habitat and that just landscape looks like, sometimes that's enough to get somebody excited to keep them coming back.
Yeah, amen to that. I just finished a series of videos for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, and for example, in one of those I said the best ambassador for new hunters is not you, it's your dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's get to the important stuff. Marissa, what kind of dog are you working these days?
Oh, the only kind that there are. I have 2 German short hair pointers.
In the page 97 in the Cabela's catalog, you can buy yourself a set of beards and eyebrows and make those really good looking dogs.
Oh, I don't know about that. I do like a scruffy face though, so I can definitely agree to that.
Excellent. Okay, let's go back to our token elk hunter. Yeah, we're going to call you that, Colby. I'm sorry, it's going to be your nickname for the rest of the podcast. By the way, you're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. That's Marissa Jensen on the left speaker and Colby Kerber on the right speaker. They're both from Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, talking about, 15 years ago, we just called it recruitment. Now you all call it R3. Colby, remind us what the 3 R's are.
Yeah, it's recruit, retain, and reactivate. And the reason we came up with the 3 R's there, and that actually came from some different work groups and an organization called the Council to Advance Hunting and Shooting Sports, which represents both non-government agencies, conservation organizations like Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, but also state agencies, federal agencies, and the industry. And so there is a collection of different groups working across the country, all with the same goal. And one of the things that came out of some of the research that was done was that we were doing multiple events across the country when it came to the recruitment side of things, but we weren't doing a very good job when it came to retaining those individuals after they had been through an event, or reactivating some individuals after they had fallen away from the sport. So when you have a one-day pheasant hunt and you take a 15-year-old out and you get them on their first bird, that's great, and that's a first step in the process. But what we found out through the research is if we were not engaging them further along in the process and keeping them throughout the year with multiple of events with their mentors, they fell away from the lifestyle pretty quickly.
You know, I'm glad to, you know, obviously I follow this stuff pretty closely, and I've spoken on the topic. In fact, I spoke on the topic in your state about 4 years ago to one of your chapters, and your big boss was sitting right next to me while I spoke. And this whole point of let's identify good prospects and why they're good, and then cultivate them over the years. Like you said, you know, you recruit the wrong person, you know, and we've all done it. We've all helped out at a youth hunt where the parents slow down, shove the kid out the side door, and then come pick them up at the end of the day. Who are some of those best prospects for us, Colby?
Well, a lot of what we're seeing actually is when it comes to the adult side of the prospects, as we already mentioned, a lot of females are coming into our organization and into the outdoor lifestyle in general. But we're also seeing a lot of that younger generation in the 20s and 30s that are out there seeking fresh food sources. So they're out there for different reasons than a lot of us. And what they're really after is being able to harvest their own game and connect the dots together from field to fork. And so we work with different organizations who recruit from a different aspect than what we do. Sometimes when they see the Blaze Orange and the Bird Dogs and the big groups out there in the field, that can be kind of intimidating when they may want to go out in a smaller setting and be more focused on the surrounding that they're in and the solitude and being able to connect that fresh food source. So we're seeing a lot of that where we're really focusing on imagery and marketing towards the relevance and the food side of the ethics, because that's what seems to be bringing people into the sport at this day and age.
Do you see any pushback among that, for lack of a better term, I'll call them the millennial generation, or Gen Z before or after? Is that after? Anyway, you know that stuff. But is there pushback? And here's why I bring this up. You know, when I give that talk, I also talk about how some target markets, some audiences are simply they're too hard to overcome inertia. And inertia in this case might be, well, they live in an urban setting. Well, they don't have any money to spend. They can't even buy a box of ammo, let alone a shotgun, etc. Is there pushback in any of those groups that you can overcome in some way?
Well, no, I think, you know, it's just when you dive a little bit deeper into those some subjects, especially when it comes to the purchasing side of things, a lot of those individuals actually have some free income to use because they're kind of in that transition state where if you're talking about a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid, those are definitely things that you need to take into consideration because they may not have a vehicle to drive to an area to hunt, and they a lot of times don't have that income to make purchases. But when you start looking at these individuals that maybe recently graduated college, now they're getting a job, they're not married yet, they don't have those bills, they may not have kids to pay for, and there's a big following of those individuals out there because they have the free time, and some of them have pretty good jobs and pretty good income that they have the money to spend. So that's kind of something that on the surface you look at and think, well, they're not going to be making a lot of purchases, but they're some of the more active hunters that we see. One of the groups when you get outside of the upland world in the archery and the big game scene is the hunting public out of Iowa. Group just started from a bunch of millennials that were going out taping their own hunts and putting them on YouTube in a sense, and the following that's behind them because it is so authentic and it is so real and it's so achievable because they're hunting mostly on public ground, that has a big appeal to people because it's something that at that age they see themselves, they see individuals that look like themselves, and the goal that's there is something that they can achieve themselves.
Marissa, you of the two of you, I think you have the tougher row to hoe, but you also have, I guess, demographics on your side, so that is a mitigating factor. But taking all that into consideration and what you described as what you do, can you tell us what kind of wins you've put in that column lately? What are the victories you've seen?
Well, as you alluded to earlier, women are the fastest growing demographic in hunting right now. And it's just really exciting to continue to see the growth in that area. We know that bird dogs can be a really motivating factor for a lot of new upland hunters. So that's really exciting. And I think just watching that light bulb turn on for individuals, they may come to one of our social events, which are our women, wine, and wild game events, and never had wild game before, don't understand the connection between hunting and conservation and where those funds come from, and kind of being able to put that all together for somebody to see that big picture, that's always a win. Working with our staff across the country who, work directly with the chapters and our volunteers, and just the growth of Women on the Wing initiative across the country is so inspiring and exciting. And then we also have a landowner and farmer and rancher program, our women conservation outreach, that it's pretty incredible to see women that are making an impact on the landscape as far as wildlife habitat goes when they're working land. So there's a lot of just really exciting things happening. It's hard to pick one win, all of it.
You just touched on something, and both of you have alluded to a similar thing. When USA Today started, it was a newspaper, by the way, for those of you who aren't old enough to remember newspapers. I interviewed the founder, and I asked him, why are all those big splotches of color on each page? And he said, those are all entry points. Your eye goes to those, you read that story, and then you keep reading after that. You all are both describing entry points of various sorts, whether it's a wild food, whether it's dogs, which is my big deal, or anything else along those lines. Yeah, but the one that just popped to mind, Marissa, is this conservation thing. You talk about, well, just go for a walk with me in the woods or in the, plains and do that. But does conservation become a recruiting effort as well? For example, you don't need to be a pheasant hunter to go out and improve some riparian areas in a nearby wildlife management zone, for example. I mean, do you see that as another entry point?
Absolutely. It's exciting how important it is to a variety of individuals to maintain the landscape for wildlife. And it's really fascinating as far as our Women on the Wing conservation outreach program. There are approximately 1 million women farmer and ranchers in the United States alone. That equals 1/3 of all farmland and ranch land. And then on top of that, there's approximately 87 million acres that are owned by non-operating women landowners. And it's, what we're finding through a lot of events and a lot of, discussions and surveys and whatnot is, these women and, farmers and ranchers in general that are just really passionate about trying to incorporate these wild places within their properties too. They want to make a difference for wildlife. And, you see it with our youth events, just the important, everything from, pollinator habitat for monarch butterflies and bumblebees, and, how that directly relates to good brood rearing habitat for our upland birds. Colby and I talk about this all the time with our team and with the organization, and, good bird habitat can be good deer habitat, good turkey habitat. I mean, there's all that connection there. And I think so many people are inspired and passionate about that, especially when they find out that there's things that they can do to help.
I'll never forget sharing a cab to the airport after a pheasant fest way back before you two were involved, with somebody who said, I'm here to talk about pollinators. And I said, what? And now it's hot. It's a big deal. Colby, you keep whittling away at your arrows over there for a moment more, if you will, please. Marissa, I want to ask you what happens at a Women on the Wing event.
Great question. And it's going to come down to what type of event. So
Okay.
we have 4 programs that are under the Women on the Wing initiative. We have our R3 focus, which isn't any different than Colby's goals and desires and plans with his programs. It's just that they're women focused. So we've got our Learn to Hunt, Learn to Shoot events. And then we have our conservation outreach program, which I just spoke a little bit about, working one-on-one with women landowners, operators, non-operators. We have our Women Wine and Wild Game social events that are just an opportunity to talk about wild game, to talk about ways to, sustainably harvest, your meal and enjoying those outdoor spaces and making that connection to conservation. And then we also have Women on the Wing chapters. So, Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, exist only because of the volunteers and chapters that help us, deliver programs and events on a local level. And so we have the opportunity for there to be women-focused chapters as well.
Thank you. And if somebody wants to get involved, what's the best way for them to reach out and maybe make some inroads with the Women on the Wing program?
Absolutely. So they can go to either pheasantsforever.org or quailforever.org, and under our participates tab, it can find the link to our Women on the Wing page. That has all our information about the different programs. It has a link for upcoming Women on the Wing events. And then it also has a very specific blog page that we've developed that are stories that are written by women for the women audience. So it's pretty exciting. I encourage individuals to check out the page, and feel free to reach out to me as well if there's anything I can help with.
Excellent. Colby, your turn now. Having kind of muddled around in some of the worlds that you're in for quite a while in a previous life, what are some of the bigger challenges you face dealing with what I'll call the bureaucracy, for example? You're dealing with governmental agencies, you're dealing with non-governmental organizations that may as well be governmental. Where are your biggest challenges?
Well, I think in the past, Scott, what the big challenges have been is we all get together, we have great ideas, and we talk about different initiatives and ways that we can conquer some of these barriers. But then we all go back to our own organizations or our own agencies in our own states, and we work on our own projects. But I have really seen that change over the last few years, and everybody is starting to get in the same boat and row in the same direction. And you're starting to see that through things like our multi-state grant program, the Council to Advance Hunting and Shooting Sports, as I talked about, some of our national work groups. You're seeing state agencies that are working on a common goal and looking for common solutions that work across this country for the betterment of sportsmen and sportswomen. You're seeing things where you're taking a whole entire region within fish and wildlife agencies and seeing them work together. That didn't happen 20, 30 years ago on a lot of these types of things. It was just more worried about what's happening in your state and your license dollars. It's really changed a lot. So that is good to see that we're all committed, we're all working together, and we're sharing our resources, because at the end of the day, in order to change the tide and really fix this, it's going to take all 11.5 million hunters across this country. It's the same thing with our organizations. Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever is not going to be able to solve these problems. We can put a lot of programs on the ground, the Learn to Hunt and Learn to Shoots that we talked about, but that's only going to touch a fraction of the individuals that's going to take to really turn the tide. But if every hunter that is out there right now, there's 11.5 current license buyers across this country. If they all just took one new person out this year and the following year, we could turn the tide and solve this issue. We wouldn't be talking about the numbers that we have today, and all it takes is one new person. You don't have to go out and take a dozen new hunters every year. It's just one. So there's a pretty simple solution out there, but it's really tough to get them to take that step.
Hold that thought, because I'm going to give you a chance to catch your breath while I expend more breath. You're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. Quick break here, including our Handle It segment coming up in just a moment. Colby and Marissa, you can put your feet up for a moment as I talk about a couple of our sponsors, including Dr. Tim's Performance Dog Food. You know, this time of year, performance is critical. I see it all the time in Flick. He's up to about 400 miles on the ground hunting this season. My feet hurt just saying it, but he is doing incredibly well. His feet as well, by the way. Thanks in large part to the sources of the ingredients in Dr. Tim's dog food. He calls it performance dog food because it is for dogs that work really hard. Dr. Tim is a veterinarian. He's a musher. He knows how to get performance out of dogs via their stomach. For example, the chicken meal used in Dr. Tim's pet foods is guaranteed antibiotic and hormone-free, and it's sourced exclusively from the United States. In fact, you can go to every single ingredient on Dr. Tim's website and find out where the eggs are from, where the salmon meal is from, where the salmon oil is sourced from. It's all right there, completely transparent. Try that with your current dog food provider. I can guarantee you will learn something at drtims.com. 30% off your first order. Just use the code UplandNation. And espamerica.com is where you learn more about listening more carefully with their electronic earplugs. ESP stands for Electronic Shooters Protection. I'm a big believer. Told you I didn't hunt this past weekend. Baseball knees. Yeah, I was a catcher, but that's another story. So I went out and shot a few clay targets. I left my ESP electronic earplugs in my ears as I moved from one sporting clay station to another at the Redmond Rod and Gun Club. Thank you, guys. They fit comfortably. They stay in, and you can still hear those machines even on the long incomers. So you have as much notice as you would in the field, which I also wear my electronic earplugs for. 30-day money-back trial. Get fitted locally. Learn more at espamerica.com. Welcome to the Handle It segment of the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden from the Cabela's podcast studio. You know, I talk a lot about what I learned the hard way so you don't have to. And here's a perfect example. The week before last, we were out in the middle of nowhere. Kind of like those places. And Flick had locked up on a big covey of chuckers. So let's talk about timing. It is everything when it comes to dogs, especially dogs in the field when they're distracted by all the wonderful smells. I watched him. I did not look at the birds. This was all about me and Flick and learning more about how to keep him steady. I gave him time to do the right thing, which at that point was stay steady. Now, I timed it so that when he started to rear back, and you all know what I mean if you watch your dog instead of look for the birds on the ground, he's about ready to rear back, and then he's going to break that point. That's when you give your command. It's all about watching your dog, anticipating all the possible options that he might exercise, and saving your commands for the time when he needs the little reminder instead of when he's already doing what you want him to do. By the way, good boy, Flick. Good dog. All right. Welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. All right. Marissa, Colby. Let me give you a better introduction than that. Sorry about that. Jeez. Marissa Jensen is the Education and Outreach Program Manager for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. Colby Kerber is the Hunting Heritage Program Manager for the same organizations. Colby, I see your byline every once in a while in my NAVDA magazine, don't I?
Yeah, been writing a couple of articles every month for the Versatile Hunting Dog magazine, and it's a great partnership that we have with NAVDA. Truly love working with everybody in that group, and we started a partnership a couple of years ago based on the fact that they have a lot of the same goals that we do. We're trying to provide better habitat and better access to places where their group can obviously hunt and train their dogs and do things like that, but with the core values that we needed to get more people into the uplands. And so part of that is at a lot of our events, those Learn to Hunt events we talked about, those events are put on by volunteers that are mentoring and guiding and doing everything that it takes to put on an event. And one of the missing factors we had was having good bird dogs at some of those events. Just because the volunteers putting it on were busy doing other things, they weren't able to bring their dogs. And so we've brought in NAVDA on through that partnership, and it's just been very successful having them help out, bring those the best of the best when it comes to dogs and dog handlers, and it's been really great.
Boy, I agree 100%. In fact, about 3 years ago when we finally did our last version of the Fur Feathers Friends military hunt, that's what I did. I brought in a whole bunch of NAVDA members, some driving as far as 1,000 miles to put their dogs on the ground, show them off to everybody else, and it does work. So I'm glad to see that relationship going so well. When you're not doing this, Colby, and you're not, whittling another arrow and fletching your arrows for your potential elk hunt next time, what else are you doing? Are you going out with a dog somewhere?
A lot of times if I'm following a dog, Scott, it's somebody else's dog. So that is on my radar. I do have a Labrador Retriever, but it's in my very near future. But most of the time, what I'm doing instead of following a bird dog is following my kids. So I spend a lot of time as a father of a young son who is 3 and a young daughter who is 6. And I am doing everything in my power to raise them in the outdoors. And that is not just during hunting season. It's 365 days a year, whether it's out on our family farm that I grew up on, or if it's going to the uplands, if it is out looking for frogs in the creek bottom, whatever it may be, I am trying to raise a family in the outdoors. So unfortunately, the bird dog had to take a little bit of a step back as I'm training the kids right now, but they're getting to that age now where we're in the market for a bird dog, and once we do get one, they're going to play a large role in raising the dog and training it.
Okay, so just reassure all of us when you're training your kids, you're only using the vibration and the beeper part of the electric collar, right?
Yeah, no, I don't put them in the dog kennel and don't turn the collar up too high, but no, they really love the outdoors, and they can get a little bit crazy, but that's what the outdoors is for, is let those kids run and burn off some of that energy. They get cooped up all day long in school and things like that, and there's no better place for them to burn off some of that. Nature is a great place for them to learn and explore.
Okay, and if you're from Child Services and you're listening, that was a joke, by the way. Colby would never do anything quite like that. I know that. So don't worry about that e-collar joke. But Colby, it does bring up an interesting challenge, and that is, and I ask this periodically on the Facebook pages, when is the right age to bring a child along on an actual hunting trip? Now, I'm not saying the kid has to carry a gun or a BB gun or a pop gun or anything else, a stick with an orange tip on it for that matter, and I used to do that with Boy Scouts. When should we actually bring a child with us to watch the whole act? And I think you know what I mean by that. There may end up being a dead thing on the ground. So you got any recommendations for the rest of us on that?
I don't think there is a cut and dry answer for that, Scott. It's just as Marissa had mentioned earlier, every person is an individual. So some of those kids are going to be all for it. They're going to be ready to go, and they're going to be at a younger age ready to participate in that. Some of them it's going to take longer. So there isn't really a great answer. But the one thing that I would say is start small and get them involved throughout the entire year. So if you do not do a good job of explaining the entire story, talking about conservation, talking about the plants and the animals, and talking about how you're eating a meal, start there. You know, when you're eating a nice fresh meal, and talk about the source of protein in the meat and where it came from before they see the actual dead animal. You have to be able to connect those dots and bring it full circle. So I think it just depends on how you start it and when you start it. And you'll know when those kids are starting to get to that point. Most of the time when I take my kids out, again, they're still pretty young. They have gone hunting with me. They've obviously been around death. They've experienced that. But most times when we actually go out, I'm not carrying a firearm because it's more about letting them take the lead. You know, I may have a certain goal in mind that day, whether it's to harvest a couple of birds or go check a trail camera or whatever I may doing. But once we actually step foot on the ground and get out in the field, you know, my plans may completely change because it's all up to them. You know, they may want to go look for rocks or find feathers on the ground, but that's all good. It's a learning experience for both them and myself.
You know, I remember many wiser dog trainers than I'll ever be, reminding me over and over again that a puppy in the field can do no wrong. And if we adapt that to young kids in the field, I think we're on the right track. Marissa, I want to ask you about the food side of things, not because I'm a chauvinist, but because after dogs, I think an army of hunters marches on its stomach, and I do love the idea of introducing the hunting concept to people via great food. You've been around all this, and so you're much more expert than us on it. When you do these, what seems to be the real positive triggers into food-oriented events?
That's a great question, and it certainly is kind of an opportunity to welcome people in that are hesitant. And I think really a lot of people can be surprised with how delicious wild game is. Not everybody is expecting that. They're expecting it to be tough and gamey and just, you know, well, it's okay, but, you know, I'd rather have my normal chicken or beef over this. And, you know, it all comes down to preparation, as we know. And so I think that is kind of a good start for those events, is just providing different opportunities for them to try different things and realize, hey, this is good. I could actually continue eating this by choice, not because I have to. Then you talk about the health benefits that come not only from the nutritional value of that wild game, but the exercise that you get outside, the physical and mental benefits of just spending time outside. Then you tie in the fact that every time that you spend money on your shotgun, on your ammunition, on your permit, on your membership, that all goes back to conserving those places that we care about. And so it's just when presented that way, and of course presented that way on a full stomach with good food and beverages, it's kind of hard for people to walk away from that and think, I don't want anything to do with this. And then on top of that, you know, Colby chatted about, you know, with R3, social support is one of the most important things with taking a hunter from, you know, recruiting a brand new hunter to getting them to be a self-sufficient, you know, hunter in the field that's going to continue on their own. And so when you have events like this, it allows people an opportunity to meet new friends, find individuals with, you know, similar passions and interests. And so then they become their own community and support system and will continue that relationship, ideally, out into the field. So there's just a lot of benefits from these events.
I shouldn't be talking about food on an empty stomach, but here we are. What do you, again, you see this more than most of us, and I just want to help everybody become their own best recruiter. What is the biggest what is the biggest objection? Let's say you bring somebody to one of your events, and then a week later, a year later, they're no longer participating in hunting or even anything else related to it. What is their biggest reason?
I think it's that lack of social support. They feel maybe overwhelmed by what to do next after that one event, or what to do next after a time that they've gone out. Some people are willing to continue to take those steps on their own, but I think that those individuals may be few and far between. There's a lot of people who just want that kind of reassurance, and not even just from a reassurance perspective, but more they enjoy time out in the field with other people. So identifying that group and that community can be kind of make or break it sometimes. And so, and I'll let Colby jump in too, because obviously this is a big part of what he works on as well. But I would say a lack of social support is a pretty quick way to lose a hunter.
It's interesting you bring that up. And yes, Colby, you're next on this. So start making up your answer right now while I extrapolate for a moment here. One of the things that I've unpacked over the years is that there are two kinds that, you get to a certain point in your hunting career and you think nobody helped you get to that point, that you did it all yourself. You're a self-made hunter. You found all your spots yourself. You learned how to shoot all by yourself. You trained your dog completely and totally by yourself. And God damn it, I don't care about anybody else. And that's the way it is. Okay. Lucky for us, most people aren't that way. And I see that every day. I'm doing a survey right now, and most of the people who are answering the survey tell me they're taking a newcomer at least 3 or 4 times a year on a trip. Now, that doesn't mean they're following up, but at least they're getting a first step going. Colby, what do you see in the way of the reasons people pull out of this world, and what can we do about them?
Yeah, it's a lot of times it comes down to just that simple ask. Most people have an open door policy where they'll say after an event like that, as a mentor helping a new hunter, they'll say, hey, you're more than welcome to go hunting with me. But they never actually make that personal ask to those individuals afterward. And so it's kind of taking that next step to just, whether it's a text message or writing them an email, social media, but make sure you get their contact information. And then you make that personal ask. Say, hey, we're getting together this weekend. A few of us are going to go try doing some upland hunting. We'd really like you to come along. That next step from the mentor to the mentee is a lot of times what's missing. The mentees a lot of times have that fear that they're bothering somebody else, that they're taking time out of their day. And as you mentioned, Scott, most of these mentors are absolutely willing to help, but what a lot of them forget to do is take that extra step to go out of their way and try to bring somebody in with them. And it's tougher these days. Access is a big part of this entire equation. It's harder and harder to find places to go, especially when you get closer to cities where we have less habitat. It's a lot of work, and when individual hunters find a good spot, they have that honey hole that they want to go to, and another reason that they want to get out there is that solace and that solitude to get away from the busy world. Sometimes they want to just enjoy that to themselves, to their close circle with their bird dogs, and that's awesome. That's a big part of why I hunt too, is to get out there in nature and just kind of escape all of the things that are going on in the world. But if we don't do our part at least a couple of times of the year and sacrifice ourselves to get the new hunters out, it's going to be something that's really going to struggle for the future generations. And that's the thing, is it's being a true good mentor to new hunters is a sacrifice, but it's a necessary sacrifice that we all have to be able to do in order to save this outdoor lifestyle.
I can't agree more. I'm going to editorialize for just a moment, as I have. I've written this in any number of places, and in fact, you can find an essay on this topic and how to share without sharing your secret spot, for example, or how to do it right, all at findbirdhuntingspots.com. That's where most of my opinions appear, because it's my website, so I can do that. But the other thing that I've noticed is there's an evolution when it comes to hunters and fishermen. In the fishing world, we used to say, first you want to catch a fish, any fish. Then you want to catch a lot of fish. Then you want to catch a big fish. And then you don't care if you catch any fish anymore. And I've seen this frankly, in a lot of the top leadership in the industry. I will ask every CEO I interview, I ask, what do you like most about hunting? And almost every one of them has gotten to the point where they say, I like teaching other people how to hunt. And so a lot of us get there. If you don't get there, it's okay. I'm not judging, but do you see that evolution, Marissa, coming on your side of things as well?
Yeah, I do. And I think, you know, once you kind of broach that first mentoring experience, I think people become more confident that, okay, yeah, I can do this, because, you know, the mentor sometimes needs a little nudge and a little help to reassure them that you can be a good mentor too. One of my favorite, you know, phrases or comments for individuals who are kind of on the fence with becoming a mentor is, you get to relive first birds over and over and over again when you're a mentor, or somebody's first hunt. I mean, that's really exciting. We all remember our first hunt. We all remember our first bird. And to be a part of that for somebody else and knowing that you helped make that memory is really special. And I can't imagine not wanting to be a part of that. So I think that there's definitely that excitement and that interest and that evolution of a hunter. Sometimes it's just, you know, reassuring individuals that they're ready for that next step.
Man, I love that, and you're absolutely right. I'm getting what in the South they call it chicken skin. The hair standing up on the back of my neck because earlier in the podcast, before you two joined me, I talked about I'm having a pretty slow season because I'm exploring all new spots. But luckily, all the guys in my training groups over the past few years are reporting back to me on Mondays or Sunday nights and saying, "Hey, I went to that spot you took me to. Look at this picture." So I'm living it vicariously myself, and it is, there's really no feeling like it. If you were a teacher, you know what I mean. And we all are. Marissa, Colby, me, we're all teachers, and so are so many of the listeners out there who are doing exactly what we're talking about right now. If we had to nail it down, Colby, to one single kind of prospect who would be the best, if we're shy or lazy, and we agree, okay, Colby, okay, Marissa, Scott, I'm going to take one person one time this season and see how it works. I'm just going to dip my toe in the water. What is that best prospect?
Boy, I don't know, best prospect. But I will say this, it's got to be somebody that is motivated and has their own motivation and really wants to go. You know, that's the big thing about when we talk about this newer generation of engagement that we're doing with these adults and the whole experience side of things is they're motivated. So they're not some of these youth events, as you mentioned, where the parents drop them off. And they're just there to do it because their parents told them. These individuals are motivated to do it for their own reasons, but they want to be there. And there's actually a lot of individuals that want to be there and they have their motivations. They just need someone to take them out there in that first step. So I always say the first place to start when you are looking to mentor somebody is within your own circle, because of the fact that you have a relationship already built. So when you go out into the field and you're working on teaching them all the things, you don't have some of those hurdles that come along when you mentor somebody that you have no prior relationship to. So kind of all that awkwardness is gone. So make sure to just look within your own inner circle. Look for people who live down your neighborhood. Look for people that you work with. Look within your own family. Christmas is coming up here. Maybe it's somebody sitting around at your family event. Maybe it's somebody that is a little bit distant. I had it happen personally. I have a story where I do this for a job, and one of my relation at a Thanksgiving meal called me out and said, "You've never asked me to hunt. I'm 35 years old and nobody in my family hunts, and I'd love to go." So just make sure that you look within your own inner circle, and just make sure to take somebody. At the end of the day, that's the biggest thing, is take one new individual out hunting with you this year.
You know, the National Shooting Sports Foundation has a program called Plus One, which is all about that. And like I said, I've been doing some videos for them. And one of the things in one of those videos, I think, is, like you said, within that circle. And the reason being, they already understand you. They must like you a little bit or they wouldn't be in your circle. So you already get along. You can trust them and vice versa. They share your values, and much of their lifestyle is similar to yours. And by that, I mean, they have the same amount of free time. They are close enough. They're accessible to you and that sort of thing. I agree 100%. And whether you're 22 or 63 doesn't matter. If somebody is out there that you are having frequent contact with, that's the circle we're talking about. Now, the other thing that I've always found is, if you just keep your eyes and ears open, there are certain people within that circle who they won't come out and do what your relation did, your 35-year-old relation, Colby. They won't just say, hey, whack, whack, slap you upside the head, take me. But they'll say, what'd you do this weekend? Hey, show me that picture. How'd the dog do? Or something like that. And we got to be aware, we got to be situationally aware of that sort of thing. And Marissa, check me on this, because I think in general, maybe a female spouse is a little, number one, she already knows what you're doing most of the time. She's probably tired of hearing about it. But are there indicators for women, either to other women or to spouses or anybody else, that are different than that?
No, I don't think so. I think it's, just that general interest. We all have different motivators with, how we, started becoming interested in potentially hunting, and, whether that's the landscape or sustainable food source or the bird dogs or time in the field with friends. There's a lot of different, potential beginning, routes for those hunters. And some of us may have all of those as our motivators. So it's really kind of identifying what that is. And, kind of circling back with, Colby's comment on the inner circle. I had a cousin who was in his mid-20s he grew up in a rural community around hunting, and but never hunted. And he's a big foodie. He kind of has his own YouTube food channel and everything. And so it's identifying what somebody is passionate about, maybe outside of hunting. And so I went to him and said, hey, as much as you love to cook and you have the show, would you be interested in, doing a pheasant hunt and preparing wild game? And he comes with us all the time now on hunts. And so, looking at an individual and saying, what are they passionate about? Okay, how do those passions correlate to hunting or time in the outdoors? Is there a connection that we can lead the conversation with that? Hey, you love going on hikes. Let me show you what the sandhills in Nebraska look like for a hike. Or you really love, the connection with animals and dogs. Let's go watch this bird dog work. It's incredible. And so just again, I can't hammer home enough the importance of the uniqueness that we all have as individuals, and really focusing in on that, just because that gives somebody the opportunity to grow in that area to the best of their abilities, and really make it their own passion and not necessarily somebody else's passion put on them.
And let's not forget goose pepperoni.
Goose pepperoni. That sounds amazing.
When I was a so-called expert in the fly fishing world and speaking at all the sportsman shows, one of my fellow speakers handed me some of his homemade goose pepperoni, and I thought, man, I got to get me some of that. And he said, okay, let's go. And that was all it took for me. So, again, marching on its stomach and all that, there are various avenues. And again, I think what I'm hearing from both of you is, if we just keep our eyes and ears open, there is something out there that these people are interested in, and we need to just take the bull by the horns after that and do it. We're just about done here for you two. Lots more for listeners, and of course, I encourage you to listen as well once we're done here, Marissa and Colby. Marissa Jensen is the Education and Outreach Program Manager for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. Colby Kerber is the Hunting Heritage Program Manager for the same two groups, which I support wholeheartedly in any number of ways. And I've enjoyed this discussion. I want to end with kind of the bottom line here. How are we measuring our success in your two respective activities? Colby, you want to take a swing at that?
Yeah, I think we've had to readjust how we look at things and not just the big numbers. In the past it was always a numbers game. How many people did we take out? How many youth went through our programs? And now it's more about the authentic experience. So we know that it takes that more time, more energy, more dollars to do some of these events. But if we're doing it in the right fashion and giving them those true experiences, it has such a ripple effect that we really can't even quantify. So sometimes it's not all about the numbers, it's more about the quality over the quantity with our experiences, and just following up with them and surveying them afterwards. In the past, we used to put somebody through one of our programs, and they would have a good time. We'd send them on their way, and we just hoped that they, down the road ended up becoming a self-identified sportsman or sportswoman. And now we're working with those state agencies to do things like collect their hunter ID numbers and see if they continue to buy license. And if they're not, follow up and offer them opportunities to try to get them re-engaged. So again, it's about really putting multiple touch points with those individuals and giving them their own individual pathway to the uplands, so that way they can make it their experience, and hopefully they stick with us and they'll carry on that lifestyle and teach it to their inner circle and become mentors themselves down the road. It's a pretty cool part that we've seen is these individuals that go through these authentic experiences, especially if they're adults going through the program, they seem to go through that progression that you talked about, Scott, of a hunter going through the progression over their lifetime. They almost seem to skip a couple of steps, and they really want to give back to the sport and become a mentor right away. And part of that is us explaining to them that there are no expert mentors out there. In a sense, some of the best mentors that we've seen is individuals that have recruited somebody new, but they're learning together, so they're on that same page and they're learning the process together, training bird dogs together, learning through their mistakes. And so at the end of the day, just make sure that everybody gets out there and does it. And again, it's about the quality and not the quantity.
Marissa, similar question, but also I'm really, here's a pet peeve of mine, and you see it more than us. There are bureaucracies out there, state agencies of various sorts, where you walk in the door and you may as well be wearing a button that says, I'm going to make you work harder as a bureaucrat. Do you see that at all?
Oh, I don't think so. I think kind of going off of what, Colby was said, just as far as, how we define success, really numbers, as he mentioned, obviously that's really important to us as far as participation, and we want to see that grow, but we've got to think bigger and broader than that. And I think ultimately when we have better representation of women in outdoor spaces, when we have women who become leaders, we have a lot of women leaders out there, and continuing to elevate them and have somebody go from a mentee in one of our programs, whichever program it is, and then they start hosting events, they start a Women on the Wing chapter, they start mentoring others, and just kind of growing that community of women is really important. And the brands and the the gear and everything else will follow. So really it just becomes the normal for it to be 50-50 as far as what we're seeing with women and men and age and backgrounds. Just really working to diversify what the upland space and the outdoor space looks like. That's definitely how I would define success.
Absolutely. And I just got to jump in and editorialize once again, only because organizations that I've spoken to over the last 10 years about this whole topic, many of them, and if you already know this, I apologize, bear with me, but many hunters, and for that matter, many anglers, don't realize that licenses and permits and tag sales and the dollars that come from you that way, yes, they do fund a lot of activities within your local fish and wildlife agency, but the majority of that money comes from you buying stuff. On the guns and ammo side, it's all of that. It's guns and ammo. And if you're not buying guns and ammo, or other new people aren't buying guns and ammo, all that excise tax money from the Pittman-Robertson Act doesn't flow to the feds, who then dole it out to the state agencies. So it's all about creating new folks who actually want to spend some money buying gear. On the fishing side, it's a little more broadly based in terms of what kind of gear, but in the hunting and shooting side, it's just guns and it's just ammo. So get them out there, and then eventually, hopefully, they'll buy something. If they want to learn more about anything here and maybe get some tools for becoming better recruiters, any place in particular on the website that they can go? Marissa, Colby?
Yeah, I would say, one of the best things to do is join the organization, become a part of Pheasants Forever or Quail Forever, which can happen at our website, pheasantsforever.org, quailforever.org. That way you become connected with your local chapter, your local field representative. You're going to get constant updates as far as events and ways to stay involved. I would say that that's not only the easiest method for consistent information, but it's also the most impactful way to become involved. But there's there's lots of opportunities on the website for more resources, so check that out.
And if you're hesitant, you can still go to the website. You don't need to be a member. You can learn all about most of that stuff, but of course it would be good to pungle up a buck or two here and there, and probably get something free when you join anyway. So Colby, anything to cap off our discussion? Colby Kerber?
Yeah, I think one of the things on the website too, and we haven't mentioned, we've talked throughout this conversation about taking somebody new hunting and that sacrifice. And so one of our big challenges as an organization of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever is, again, challenging mentors to take somebody new hunting. And with that, we actually have what's called our National Mentor Pledge. It's just kind of our way to challenge you to do it, but then also thank you for taking somebody new hunting. So if you go to the website, pheasantsforever.org or quailforever.org/mentor pledge, you can sign up and tell us your story, and it runs now through the end of June, and we're actually giving away a bunch of prizes for those individuals that signed up and took somebody new hunting. So the grand prize is going to be a guided hunt over in Illinois with Harple's Heartland Lodge, choice of upland or deer, waterfowl, but we're also, it's sponsored by Alps Outdoors. We're giving away a bunch of gear. We're giving away firearms from Weatherby, all kinds of good stuff. So again, it's just our way to challenge everybody. Go on there, sign up. Hopefully you win yourself some nice prizes for sacrificing a little bit of your time to save our outdoor lifestyle.
Hey, and I can't think of a better prize package than that. Been to Harpole's, made a couple TV shows there. You can watch those on the website. Let's see, what is it? Scott Linden Outdoors, I think, is the YouTube channel for me. Go and then search Harpole, and you'll get a taste of what you might be in store for if you do what Colby just told you to do. Now it's my turn to tell Colby and Marissa, thank you for all of your help, your hard work, and your information. You are dismissed. Thank you so much. The rest of you, pay attention. We still have your public access segment called This Land is Your Land. A few other things coming up on the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. Thank you for continuing to listen. All right, the last newsletter poll was fascinating for a lot of reasons, thinking about Christmas, among other things, and all the things that we might acquire if we are so inclined. The Upland Nation Insights newsletter goes out every week to your email inbox. If you don't get it, sign up at findbirdhuntingspots.com, and You'll probably learn something that you might be able to apply that weekend, whether it comes to dog training, dog care, hunting strategies and tactics, maybe even a place to go that you hadn't thought about before. And then you can answer the next poll yourself. Last week, the question was, what type of shotgun is on your shopping list? Yeah, you'd be surprised. Okay, number one on the list, 45% of you are looking for a new over and under. I'm frankly astounded at the number of you looking for a new side-by-side, 36% of you. 16% looking for a semi-auto, and 3% of you old schoolers are still shopping for a pump gun. So good luck, and hope Santa leaves a long, skinny box under the tree for you. And if you don't get it there, maybe you'll get it somewhere else down the road. All right. The Upland Nation podcast is brought to you in part by Gunner.com. Yeah, all sorts of great gear there, from dog crates to accessories for those crates. And now a whole bunch of Gunner gear, hoodies and hats, t-shirts, gift cards. Take a look at some of those videos. Look at some of those still images. It's unbelievable how important good protection for your dog is when you're transporting your dog to a hunting trip or anywhere else for that matter. Learn more about all the things they do and watch the videos, please, at gunner.com. Yeah, this land is your land, and my land, and everybody else's land from New York. Well, whatever the rest of the lyric is, I can't remember. It's brought to you by FindBirdHuntingSpots.com and by Happy Jack Dog Care Remedies, HappyJackInc.com. Learn all about their great remedies for everything for your dog's skin, coat, parasites, and my favorite product, Pad Coat. Someday I'll give you an essay on that as well. If you've been to this spot, do me a favor and private message me or send me an email or something like that. It has been on my list since I was invited, I bet 10 years ago. I drive by it all the time, and I hope to be there later this season. It's the Yakima Training Center Army Base. It's near Yakima, Washington. That's Central Washington, where, believe it or not, among the tanks and the armored personnel carriers that are drilling out there, they'll let you hunt for valley quail. And it's pretty darn good. I have that on good authority from some extensively experienced hunters in the area. Thank you, by the way, and I will take you up on that invitation, I promise you. It's kind of sagebrush steppe, so it's bunch grass, sagebrush, a little bitter brush, and lots of rolling hills and valleys. You do need a recreation card, and you can get that right at the base. Check in advance, make sure everything's cool for whatever day it is. No, they're not going to let you hunt the spots where they're blowing things up or shooting at people. I mean, pretend people. They have other areas just for hunting, and the valley quail hunting at the Yakima Training Center Army Base near Yakima in Central Washington can be stellar, if you believe some of the stories and the photos I've seen. So, thank you all again, and hope that you are having a good time out there. Well, our good time has come to a close. I sure appreciate your listening. Thank you to Marissa, Jensen, and Colby Kerber of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. Want to learn more about how to recruit a new hunter? Get on the webpage. Poke around. You'll learn something. You'll find out. Keep your eyes and ears open. That might be the easiest thing to do. And then do take one. Take a new hunter. Have a good time. That's the number one rule. If you want to talk between now and the next time you listen to the Upland Nation podcast, go to the Wing Shooting USA or Upland Nation Facebook pages. Check them out. Please subscribe, rate, or review, especially at Apple Podcasts. Thank you, Jadomus, T. Collins 2, and B. Mystic for your kind reviews. I'll close with this quote from Ben Williams, who says, "There is no psychiatrist in the world like a puppy licking your face." Isn't that the truth, Ben? Can you all agree? Can I get an amen? All right, have a great week. Be safe out there, but be out there. I'm Scott Linden. It's the Upland Nation Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. See you in the field.